Hi, Tom.
Hello, Lee.
Tom, a couple of years ago, you and I and some other folks were standing around in little municipal airport outside of Brownsville, Texas at 3 in the morning, watching people be loaded onto flights to be deported. And you got the idea to follow the flights. Would you tell us what that was all about and what's happened since?
Yeah, and I give a lot of credit to Carla on our team because she really was the one who started to look at FlightAware and trying to identify when they would come in and other things, and really kind of got it going. And then as time went on, then and we the pandemic came and we were all forced into our homes, and witnessing in a physical sense wasn't very possible. It seemed like there was something we could do in this sense from a virtual perspective. And so I just kind of kept on it, and Carla helped out get it kind of organized at the beginning. And then we just started to track these flights.
All right, so let me back you up. You mentioned FlightAware, and now you're saying track flights. So give us some idea, without giving away any secrets, how you do that.
Yeah. So basically, every flight obviously is on an airplane. Every plane has a unique registration number that we refer to as a tail number. And using FlightAware, especially, there's a professional version, which I subscribe to.
That's an app, right?
Yeah, it's an app.
Okay.
And the version I have is kind of an upgraded professional version. You can track by tail numbers. And so it took a while, but I've been able to figure out the carriers that are used for these ICE Air flights by watching locations, learning the locations. So every day I scan the typical locations for the flights, about probably 10 or 15 of the typical locations. And I also get alerts for, I think, maybe 75 or 80 different planes that are likely planes every day. So I get probably 300 alerts a day. And I use all of that then to kind of bring it together and match up tail numbers with locations and flights, and then document them.
Now, I've seen you quoted in any number of national and international press stories. It seems that by using this technique, you've been able to put together patterns of where we're deporting people to, and where we're moving around our country that no one else had. You want to be immodest and tell us if that's the case?
Yeah, it is the only source for that information. And I do a monthly report, which is out on our website at witnessattheborder.com, .org rather. And so anyone can go out there and take a look at it. But I send it out also to probably 30 or 40 press contacts, basically all the major immigration press contacts. And I don't even want to say how many questions I get. And some of them just kind of raise their interest in doing things, and some of them they actually use the information, but a lot of times it's the information, not the data, that they're interested in. I also provide it to all the humanitarian groups, Amnesty International, Human Rights First, others who also use it, and a number of congressional contacts. I also provide it to.
Now, to me, what's significant is it would have seemed to me that this is the sort of information our government would have just told us about, but they haven't. You've had to actually do detective work to figure it out. And the value of it is you've been able over time to figure out where there are changes in our policy before the government even told us that there were changes. You tracked people being moved from one part of the world to another, and you drew the patterns. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I guess the most recent example is this change with Venezuelans, because there are these things called lateral flights where they're moving people literally across the border, El Paso to Brownsville, El Paso to San Diego. And for a while, they did this to expel people because they couldn't expel, for example, in Brownsville, they couldn't expel a certain classification of people. So they would fly them to San Diego and expel them under Title 42 in San Diego. And then that stopped about 9 months ago or so, and I could see the patterns change. So I was able to tell press people what was happening. And but then I saw this within the last month, an acceleration significantly in those flights. So like so far this month, there've been like 85 flights. They've already blown through the record month that there has been. And the patterns I could see very clearly were getting set up were to go from El Paso, where many Venezuelans cross, almost 70 or 80% of Venezuelans cross, to Harlingen, to Laredo, and to San Diego, which are all areas where Venezuelans are expelled. So they're back on a program now of this, what I call lateral for expulsions, where these lateral flights are basically just to expel people. So with that, I was able to start talking about it. And in fact, I'll probably tomorrow, sometimes I send out to the press like a mid-month thing if I see something unusual. And I'll send out probably tomorrow all the lateral flights, where they're coming from and going to highlight to them what's actually happening, because these laterals for expulsion are really horrible experiences for people.
When we were out watching the planes in the early morning hours, sometimes they would roll big fuel tanker trucks up in front of us so that we couldn't see what was going on. Have there been any efforts to keep you from tracking these flights, as far as you can tell?
No, it's, occasionally a carrier will get upset, like Omni. They didn't like being publicized that they were doing this. So they started to, what we call, hide their tail numbers. They didn't make them available for the public, but there are still ways. There's other apps, ABD, that show real time and they can't hide from. So it takes a lot more work, but I can generally find them. But DHS has never, and they know, I know they know I do it, but they have never, ever, either acknowledged it or tried to get me to stop doing it. I use public information, so there's not much they can do, to be honest.
Stay safe, Tom.
Thanks, Lee.